Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alex Witt.
Hey there, everyone. I am so excited to be here because I came all the way from New York. However, that pales in comparison to so many of you. Last night I had a great chat poolside here at the W, and I met a lovely lady from Australia, another from Ireland, another from India, and I didn't at all complain about my jet lag. Not a problem at all. So anyway, it is a total thrill for me. Matter of fact, when I was first approached about a month ago to be here and join all of you, I thought, me, of all people, to be hanging out and talking about this incredible foundation, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, and be here with all of you of such great accomplishment. I'm a news anchor at MSNBC. I anchor the broadcast Weekends with Alex Witt. And politics is our bread and butter, but I like to consider myself old school. So I do a lot of things, and particularly this weekend, I was spending the entire weekend talking about the release of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, Afghanistan, everything going on with the VA hospital. So I have a very diverse palette. That said, something that is near and dear to my heart is charitable foundations. And when you look throughout the world at the ones that are accomplishing some of the most amazing, fantastic things, you can look no further than what we have at the epicenter here in Austin, which is the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. So without further ado, we're all here to see them. Let's bring up our two hotshot superstars, Michael and Susan Dell. So, we all know what Dell Inc. is. Dell Foundation is something that is completely separate. There is no crossover whatsoever, save for this prolific name that, you know, inspires so much good and success and wonderful things around the world. So, I'm going to throw out a couple of things and just let you know some of the background before we have Michael and Susan talk about all the details of what they've accomplished. 1999, everyone, it started. This was the year that began to transform the lives of children that were living in poverty, urban poverty throughout the world. They started right here in their backyard in Austin, Texas, met with success, and decided, you know, we can expand this. We're going to take this throughout the United States, which they did. Then they took it into India. From there, moved into South Africa, and have also done an incredible amount of fundraising and partnerships and created commitments that now have reached over $1 billion at the end of this last year. I mean, imagine all that going to charity and helping kids living in urban poverty. I want to make note before we talk to you guys about the details, kind of three areas that they really focus on are, first of all, education. You know, it's really the root of everything for children, and also the health of children. I mean, there's so many different issues around the world that children face indigenous to their communities, one of which I know Susan will talk about here in the United States. We deal with a lot of obesity. They're doing a lot of work in India with helping to support government programs where they fund deworming, things like that. I mean, things that we just, you know, we don't necessarily have to deal with here. So there's a different pocket of issues relative to wherever we are geographically. Another thing they've helped to do is help to shore up the financial stability, the economic stability of the families of these children whom they're trying to uplift their lives and give them positive futures. So with that sort of being the template of our discussion, let's talk about the first thing, and that is with health. And talk about, Susan, why you decided to focus on obesity right here in your backyard. Because again, if you don't have your good health, you're not going to be able to go to school. You're not going to be able to learn properly. So obesity was something that hit home for you.
Yeah, well, clearly obesity is a big issue, not just for our country, but around the world now, unfortunately. And it's something that I personally was passionate about because I believe very much in people being active and living a good lifestyle, which includes not only exercise, but also healthy, nutritious food. So we wanted to tackle that in hopes to really instill some new lessons for people where they would start to change the way that they were doing things. So we ended up partnering with HBO. HBO was doing some documentaries on this issue. And so the Weight of the Nation was a great way to help get the word out and really build awareness for the problem around the country. And that turned out to be a really successful way to get started. We also, we did 2 books. They're called Be Well. And the books, they're a compilation of stories from moms in urban areas around the country. And these moms are moms who have very little resources, but yet they've figured out ways just by being creative and really taking some time to have healthier lifestyles for their families. Simple things like either being involved in a community garden or taking back a park, for instance. There's a lot of people that live in areas where it's just not even safe to go outside and exercise for their kids. So they would get together with the neighbors and they would patrol these parks, and a mom would be doing aerobic classes and parents would be making sure that it was safe for kids to, exercise. But there was a lot of different stories that these moms could share, and other moms around the country that did not have a lot of resources would be able to then go and do some of these same things. So we found that that's been very helpful.
Something that I love that you picked up on was the idea of these corner markets. You've really helped to subsidize those, and that allows these kids to be educated about healthy food and choose to stay away from the snack food and get the vegetables and fruits. I mean, that's made a big difference because they can help control what they're eating.
Well, and in some situations, it's not that they don't want healthy food, it's not available. So you have food deserts all over. So there was one story of a mom who would get on a bus and literally go on a 2-hour ride to go visit with farmers markets and get fruits and vegetables. She'd bring them back, and then what she realized is that, well, we could do this for our school district if I could just convince all these farmers to come and set up basically a farmer's market. So she convinced these people to do that, and then all of a sudden now these families have access to the fresh produce, and they learn about, okay, we'll make serving sizes that you can freeze, and this lasts you for a longer period of time. And so things like that can happen. But I think that these stories are really important ones to share, because otherwise you find yourself, if you're a person who's living in an urban setting, you find yourself with not as many options, and so you've got to get creative.
Yeah.
They've also done things like sharing, the tough stuff that's hard to do as a parent, like limiting screen time. We limit screen time in our household,
Yeah,
and
me too.
it's tough. You can ask my son.
Jack.
It's tough, but I think when other parents feel like they're not alone in this fight, you limit screen time. You take all the sugary drinks out of the house and you don't buy them. You don't buy junk food, and you put out dried fruit and fresh fruits and vegetables, and you do things differently. You don't fry. You either broil or you steam.
Yeah.
And I think sharing those lessons with moms just makes them feel more confident that this can be done.
Yeah, and it's so nice to do it in a communal setting. They're helping each other out too,
Exactly.
comparing notes, and that's what's cool about it. Michael, I want to talk to you about education, because I know that I'm certainly old enough to have been schooled when it's sort of a cookie cutter thing. You get in the classroom and you're with 20, maybe even more other kids, and there's a teacher that's teaching to one template, but you decided we need to individualize that. So talk about the challenges of that and how you help fund these programs and how you choose the programs that you want to work with education-wise.
Well, education's been a big focus, and here in the U.S., we started with individual schools, public schools, and also charter schools. Then we worked with districts, we worked at the state level, and we found a number of things. One of the things we found was that there was really very little data, and when there was data, it was actually totally different from school to school. There was no way to comparatively understand the data and make better conclusions. And think about a child going from the 3rd grade to the 4th grade. How much does the 4th grade teacher actually know about what happened in the 3rd grade? Which subjects that the student excelled at or maybe didn't excel at? Did the student show up for every class, or was there an attendance problem, or all sorts of issues? So we worked with teachers, and we created a series of systems to be able to understand this data. We worked with the state of Texas on the Texas Student Data System, and now we're in over 6,000 of the school districts. There are almost 14,000 school districts, so we're up to almost half the school districts in the United States are using something called EDFI, which is something the foundation created and spun off. So it's in effect a child that our foundation had, like a little foundation that was
I feel like
spun
he's
out.
giving me credit for giving birth to something, but that.
So the foundation had a baby, and it's called the EDI Alliance. But the point is that how do you use data to then improve that experience, improve the outcome, give the teacher more information, and ultimately enable a better outcome. And let's also deal with the reality that You could have in the very same school 2 different classrooms teaching exactly the same subject with very different outcomes. And that's data that we need to understand, right? You know, the principal needs to understand.
Yeah.
Parents should probably understand it as well.
Yeah.
So that ultimately, you know, results can be improved.
Yeah, and what also has spawned from that is the Dell Scholars Program. You guys, there are 589 people at the students, young kids, at the end of last year that have gone through the Dell Young Scholars Program. And that means they've gone on and matriculated into college. And these are in places, like I was reading about a student who was talking about her experience, and she's from South Africa. She has an opportunity to go to either the University of Cape Town or the University of Pretoria and get an education. This is a first time ever in her family to go to college. She overcame incredible things to get there. I mean, things that we can't even imagine.
Yes.
And that is what is so inspiring. You take these people and you are giving them like a 360-degree different kind of world than what they otherwise would have. But how did that get implemented, and how do you choose those scholars?
Well, first of all, we are so proud of the Dell Scholars program, as well as the Dell Young Leaders, which is in South Africa, which is modeled after the Dell Scholars. We have 2,500 students in the Dell Scholars program, and these students are graduating with a degree. We have 85% success rate, and that's compared to 20%,
Wow.
which is the national average for kids that are in the same socioeconomic category. So we feel really good about that. I think it really has a lot to do with the differences in our scholarship program and that of others. I feel we're somewhat unique. We really try to support the student and their families in a complete way. We have what we call a wraparound service for these families. And what that means is, as you said, these kids are coming from very, very difficult, very challenging circumstances. They're coming from homes where they're maybe homeless. Parents don't have jobs. Maybe there's only one parent. There could be drug and alcohol abuse. There could be something as tragic as them being exposed to a murder. So you're talking about some kids who actually are they have the ability to study hard and to do well, but they do not have what it takes to get them past these very difficult obstacles. And so, you know, it's kids like that that we want to help. And so I'll give you an example of someone. I love this story. I actually met this young lady and got to spend an afternoon with her. Her name is Anaris, and she was a student at a high school that I'd gone to visit. And I was talking to the kids about how important college was, and I was trying to inspire them to want to go to college and to believe that they could go to college. And anyway, Anaris, she was a Dell Scholar as of 2007. She went to the University of Texas in Austin, and she graduated with a business administration degree. During her time as a Dell Scholar, she also served as a Dell Scholar Ambassador, which is a person in the program who helps other students, and that's part of our wraparound service, is that we have other students that you can talk to if you're feeling concerned or need some extra help. We have advisors for each of these students if they're having problems. But she went from graduating from UT to working for Teach for America in Florida as a second grade teacher, which we all know what a great program that is. From that, she went to Goldman Sachs, where she's an operations analyst. I should mention before I tell you what her next step is going to be that she came from a family of 6, where the average income, their annual income, is $21,500 for 6 people. So to give you a sense of how tough her life was, she just sent us an email telling us that she's going to be leaving Goldman Sachs because she's gotten into graduate school at Harvard. So she will be, exactly.
That's so amazing.
It's amazing. I mean, it's she'll be going to Harvard. She'll be studying education reform, and I mean, what an incredible story. And that kind of thing makes this so worth it for Michael and I. And as you can imagine, I mean, when you're involved in philanthropy, and hopefully all of you are or will be at some point, the more you do, you know, the harder it is to really get a sense for exactly what you're doing. I mean, we know when things are successful, and we can feel that. But every once in a while, we actually can put a face with what we're doing. And this is an example where you really see the impact you're having. And it really does make a difference. And it's been really fun to do that. And I think what I'd like to just say is that the most important thing is really asking a lot of questions, because these kids who have these problems, or families that have problems, whether it's, you know, with health or whatever it is, we do our best to ask as many questions why as we can to get to the root cause and understand what is the problem so that we can help address that problem. And that's what's helped us to be most successful.
You'd make a great reporter, just saying. But Michael, sometimes things don't work. I mean, there's going to be elements of failure sometimes, and that's got to be frustrating when you look at the need out there. But what is the criteria by which you say, this is not going to work, and we need to pull back on this and invest elsewhere? Because I know one of the key things to your success in this foundation, which is reflected in business, and all of you are, interested in and understand that, it is you have to stay focused. The enormity of what's out there that you could be doing would make you just want to sit down and lie down and take a nap, because it's just so overwhelming. So staying focused and then seeing, oops, how do you deal with that?
Well, I think first you look for an environment where you believe there's an opportunity for progress. So, we look for places where there's a reasonably stable, government infrastructure, there's some signs of progress, and organizations that are looking for help, right? If they don't want to change, it's pretty hard to convince them to change.
Do they come to you mostly, or do you guys seek them? Or is it
it's both. It's both, and certainly we work with other organizations that are involved and
NGOs and the like.
Exactly. But we also start with a baseline of data. Okay, what's really going on here? What's the opportunity? If we are to get involved here, what kind of progress do we think can occur? Let's measure and track our progress. And then oftentimes it requires, some intervention or change, or a click down, a couple of clicks down to solve a problem. In the education example, we've had kids that have just, they just weren't showing up. Well, it turns out they had no clothes, they had no hygiene, they had no ability to they kind of show up and they've got nothing. So you got to kind of help them out a little bit and give them some basic necessities. Pretty easy problem solved. We did a project with the World Health Organization around the meningitis vaccine in 2007, and turns out the biggest problem wasn't inventing the vaccine or making it, right? It was refrigerators and trash cans. How do you actually get the vaccine, which has to stay cold, into the field and then dispose of the needles and the unused, unsafe, vaccine material?
And you find out this stuff through the data. That's,
and
or practical, asking questions.
It's back to getting to the root cause. At first, the surface level problem is what sometimes stops people, but that's not really, the problem is much deeper, and it's maybe very simple to solve.
Yeah, so.
Right, so, this kind of work requires patience and perseverance, but also there are times when we'll get involved in a project and we'll conclude the results aren't coming, and we don't think they're going to come, and we'll pull out and go do something else, and that's all right too.
Yeah. Do you find that there is a challenge to understand the different cultures in which you are going to be? You guys have to research that. Vastly different India, vastly different South Africa than what we have here. Even pockets here in the United States. There's going to be certainly some cultural differences.
Yeah, just you have to operate in the local context and understand not only the local regulations, rules, customs, but also the motivations of the individuals involved that you're trying to impact in some way.
Yeah. How difficult is it sometimes working with governments or different organizations like that? They have their set rules, and they may not want big America footprint there. We know there's certain parts of the world right now where that's certainly not welcome. India and South Africa may not be as difficult, but do you have issues with governments welcoming you, or
these are certainly criteria that we think about when we go around the world to look for our opportunities, and if we're not welcome there, we tend to go somewhere else, right?
You do a lot of research beforehand before you enter a country, and then of course you hire people that are there on the ground to understand the issues.
Yeah.
But it's important to recognize that governments have fairly enormous resources, far more than private foundations. And so one of the things that private foundations can do is catalyze the spending or the activity of the government in a constructive way. And so sort of better understanding the problem, and we've done this, you know, at scale in India, starting.
I mean, I mentioned the deworming project. I mean, 19.5 million kids with that government program that you've helped, you know, shore up and fund. And I mean, 19.5 million kids. It's an extraordinary number.
And again, working with governments can be very, very effective if you understand kind of what their motivations are, what their, you know, what their context is.
Yeah. With regard to evaluating the success and moving forward, you guys are not going to stop, certainly. I mean, I can tell you, we've got India.
Just getting started.
Just
This is
getting
the
started.
first 15 years, this is
Just
kind
warming
of
up.
This is the first billion.
warm up act.
When you decide where you're going to go next, I mean, where do you sort of anticipate that may be, unless you don't want to say anything here publicly? But I mean,
We haven't really identified, if you're meaning another geography, we haven't really identified a next geography. I mean, right now we're so excited about the projects that we're working on and still in the mode of trying to learn as many lessons as we can and do more and more in India and South Africa as we learn what works and what doesn't work, and same with the US. So eventually we may expand into another geography, but we haven't made plans for that yet. But you can be sure that we'll be here for as long as we're breathing doing this.
what is it that fuels you to do this, Susan? I mean, is it a passion? Is it something that you've always wanted to do, to be a philanthropist and give back?
Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, I don't think you really, well, maybe some people wake up, you know, when they're very young and say, I want to be a philanthropist, but you kind of have to be blessed with some good fortune to be a philanthropist. And so I think for Michael and I, you know, we realize we're very fortunate. We feel so honored to have this responsibility, and it's a natural for us. I mean, we just absolutely wanted to start a foundation in order to expand the philanthropy work that we were already doing, and we wanted to do it in a more focused way, of course. And the foundation's allowed us to do that because, as you said, you cannot do everything, but if you focus, then you can really make an impact with your work. So we wanted to start the foundation, and we did that in the US in 1999, and then as you said, we expanded into India in 2006 and in South Africa in 2010, and it's been great for us. I mean, if you want to think about how you can change the world for the better, for us, we think that starting with the world's children is a good place. And a child has to be healthy, a child has to be educated, they have to feel like they're safe and they're supported by their home and their family. So that's where we've been focused for 15 years, and that's where we'll be focused as we move forward.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, you agree? Yeah, okay, there you go. one of the
well,
four.
And speaking of our kids, I have to say, we could not be more proud. I mean, our children have been involved with our philanthropy in some way or another since they were really little, before they even knew what they were doing, when they were going to ribbon cuttings or when they were going to site visits. And it's amazing to see how it affects them, from back when we were in China and visiting a school, and we'd driven for 2 hours and we had a cooler in the back of the car. And I remember when we left, that the kids, I'd said to the kids, guys, grab a water and grab a snack. And they didn't say a word to Michael and I, but all four of them, and they were young, went to the back of the car, and then they came back around and they said, is it okay if we give this to the family of the little girl that we had just been in her home? And we were amazed. They gave every water, every snack. We were about to go on another 2-hour drive. They gave it all. And we didn't tell them to do that. We never even put the idea in their head, but we've just seen them absolutely grab onto this idea of philanthropy. Our son Zach, he served on the Clinton's Alliance for a Healthier Generation. He served on their advisory board, and he went to schools and talked to the kids about exercise and eating healthy. And they just get so inspired by a young person coming and talking to them. He actually runs a camp where one of his camps they sponsor kids. They get a business to sponsor kids so that kids who couldn't go to the camp would be able to go. And then his older sister, we were kind of joking about it. She just finished her junior year, and she came home for 2 weeks between school and going to work. And we thought she'd be taking a break, but she was literally on the computer around the clock. I mean, I kept saying to Michael, like, what is she doing now? But she was working on a philanthropy project that she's been working on while she was in school. We knew nothing about it. There's there's an app that's, there's a group that's called Falling Fruit, and it's basically an app that's on the computer where you could go and access these maps, and it'll show where there's a peach tree that you can go and get free fruit from, or where you can get basil from a garden here or there. And so the app is to help people who need access to free, fruits and vegetables. So she's already translated that app for this group into Spanish so it could be bilingual. She did that while she was in school. During the 2 weeks that she was home, she was nonstop. They were doing a fundraiser because they want to make an app that's for the phone now, so that people that she figured, with these people, they're driving around and they see something that looks like this could be a part, on the map. So anyway, she was a part of helping them figure that out and then raise a lot of money for it. And I think she was exhausted by the time her 2-week break ended, and now she's going to work. So, that's not stuff that we told our kids to do. Yeah. So I would say that one of the things we were really hoping for when starting the foundation was that we would lead by example for our children and for our peers. And we've seen that does happen. And that's a really, really rewarding, feeling for the two of us.
I bet there's some people out here in the audience who wouldn't mind hiring your daughter. I think, some entrepreneurs like, yeah, we got to get that one.
She's already got a great job this summer.
Yeah.
Working for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So that's
as she left the house on Saturday, when she was giving her brother a hug and a kiss goodbye, he said to her, "Okay, Kira, go save the world now." I mean, that's kind of her thing. So it's wonderful to see.
Yeah. Michael, how do you choose the companies with whom you want to partner? Is there a certain criteria that must be met, or obviously the data, I know you'll do the research into what they can bring to it, but is it a gut feeling? Is it a name brand? I know you probably also go places that are very innovative and new too.
Yeah, the foundation works with lots of organizations of all sizes, right? From the ones you've heard of to thousands of little ones you've probably never heard of and may never hear of. Because the work they do is very specialized in very unique areas. So the criteria is really around what results are we trying to achieve, and do we think these organizations can make significant progress. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's providing funding to a well-established organization that's already proven and doing well. Sometimes it's going out in the field and catalyzing a whole new development in a whole new area. Sometimes it's working with government, working with other foundations. So it's a variety of models, but it's always grounded in, all right, what's the starting place? What's the opportunity? Are we making progress? What course corrections or adjustments need to occur to get the desired results? And importantly, how do we make significant change in a discrete period of time and get that organization on a trajectory of sustained, self-sustained success, right. And then we leave, right? And then we go do something else, right? Because that's kind of the model we like.
Yeah. How does it work, though? I was actually surprised that we were going to get you, both of you, frankly, to come and be here in the middle of a work day. It's not like you're not kind of busy. You know what I'm saying? You run this other
I'll show up anytime you tell me that I get to go spend time with my husband. So.
Oh, well, that's good.
I maybe just gave away a secret, but I'll go wherever he goes.
But truly, how does this work with the two of you? Because you head the foundation yourself, and so what are the roles that each of you plays? You're the cheerleader, that's for darn sure. You're the Energizer Bunny, that I can tell for sure on this one.
Is it shows?
It shows, yeah.
I think we do a lot of talking when we spend quality time together. When we go for long walks or hikes, or when we go for bike rides, we talk about what we would like to do, what we'd like to see happen, and so we do a lot of brainstorming together. And then of course we have an incredible team. You've met some of them today, and
75 employees.
About 70 employees, I think. Within the 3 countries. But we've got incredible people helping us, and I'll tell you that's one of the best lessons earned that you can have, is that we've really realized how important people are, not just the people that work with MSDF, but the people that MSDF works with, because you can have all the greatest technology and all the best data, but you need people who know what to do with those things. And so, we have people that help us figure out where are the better paths to go. Mm-hmm. And as you were asking about, how do you know which countries to go in where you're not going to run into big issues with government and things like
stumbling
that.
blocks, yeah.
You know, that's where Janet and others come in, and they've already done this kind of research, and they've done that kind of groundwork to let us know where they think we'll find more obstacles and where we won't. So, but we look at all of the different grant opportunities that come across, and we have a team that will absolutely suggest grants to us, but at the end of the day, we talk about whether or not we're going to do them. So we see all the grants that we're doing. They don't just happen. So we absolutely choose what we're going to do.
Something that's really interesting too for so many of you here at the DWEN conference, you know, you leave something like this and you get inspired and you want to get involved, and you teed this up nicely because you talked about lessons earned.
Yeah.
Last week, everyone, they launched a new website, and it's lessons earned. .msdf.org,
Right.
and it's really cool. I spent about an hour on it today, looking at all the different things, and what's wonderful about it is it allows you to get involved, it allows you to see what they're doing, give you ideas if you want to incorporate some of these things within your own business practices or your own backyards. But the big thing too that I appreciate as a mom, I always tell my kids, when you make a mistake, that's okay. Make that mistake, learn from it, and try not to repeat it, you know? And on this website, you are completely open about this did not work and why. I mean, how important is that, Michael, that you look at the mistakes, you look at the failures, I mean, something that I don't think you're that familiar with in a general sense, but on occasion, you know, you have to familiarize yourself with that and learn from it.
Well, it's not really talked about a lot, but you know, the acceptance of risk is a very important part of culture, right? And how particularly new things happen, new innovative things. And what that ultimately means is that you're going to have some failures, and failures are where you learn, you make adjustments, and if all you do is succeed, you don't actually learn anything, right? So you learn when you're making mistakes, and now you don't want to make the same mistake over and over again. That's not learning. That's something different. But by you know, making those tiny adjustments along the way, and hopefully those mistakes are small enough that, you know, they're correctable, you're able to kind of find your way to much greater success.
Yeah. You know, one thing that's different about philanthropy than business, in business, businesses compete, and everyone's trying to get either their market share or they're trying to, you know, win in some way. In philanthropy, we want all philanthropic efforts to win. So the lessons earned is very important to us, to get out that lessons earned website, because we want people to see what mistakes we've made so that they won't hopefully make the same ones. And you know, our goal, and I'm sure the Gates Foundation goal and the goal of many foundations out there, is that you want as many foundations out there doing the work that's important to them as possible, and we want them all to succeed.
Yeah. Do you guys ever confer? I mean,
Oh yeah, all the time. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, talk about, as Michael said, you talk about the obstacles you've come up against, and when is it time to decide this is not going to work, and when is it time to, you know, put some more energy behind it, and then also just talking about which projects we'll partner on, because sometimes you end up partnering with other groups in order to make a bigger impact. So. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
I think part of philanthropy too is that you have to have a passion for what you're doing.
Right.
And two of the critical components with you guys looking at, you know, education and health of young people, of children, where did that come from? I mean, because there's so many different things you could do. You could look at trying to clean the water around the world. I know sometimes you have to, and you've done that certainly in India when you've tried to build these homes. But you know, education and health, I mean, two of many things you could have focused on.
Well, you know, as I said in the beginning, children are, in our minds, the best way to make positive change in the world. I mean, you know, where else better to start than with the children of the world? And so, you know, trying to help children who are underserved and, you know, need your help, that sounded to us like a great place to start. We have 4 children of our own. We know how important their health, their education was to us. Yeah. It was really a no-brainer. It really wasn't like we had to sit around and think about what do we want to do. We knew what we wanted to do. I think the hard part was really focusing, and I have to say that one of the hardest things about being involved in philanthropy is we see so many great opportunities out there, and we see so much great work that's being done. It's hard to say no, and we get asked every week to be involved in things that actually don't match and don't align with our goals or our focus. And we have to say no, and that's very hard because it's not that we don't think it's worth the effort or the financial support. It's just, as you said, we need to stay focused in order to make the greatest impact. So,
But interestingly, I was looking at the research on what you guys are doing in India, and you look at, or I have these numbers here, something like, was it 181,500 slum residents in India because of the work and the monies that you raised in 2011 and 2012. I mean, 181,500 people are going to move out of the slums into the kind of housing that affords them just basic things, water and electricity. Now that is a departure from health and education,
no,
but
not really. Michael can speak to that. It's about family economic stability, and these kids have to have a healthy place.
like the kids
to
you were
live.
saying who didn't have the clothes.
Yeah, if you've been into one of these slums, and we've been right in the middle of the biggest one in the world with our kids,
And they saw it, absolutely.
and you get a sense for what's going on, and what's amazing is the creativity and the ingenuity of people to go out and solve these problems, whether it relates to sanitation or we've been very involved in microfinance, and that is helping millions of people. Just the little part that we're doing, right? Create businesses of their own and rising out of poverty. And I've been fortunate to see the role that technology has played in that, on a pretty global scale. But when you see kind of microfinance applied to a small, very, very small business, and then multiply that by millions or tens of millions. And India is interesting because it is a country that is on the move, but it still has 1/3 of the world's poor live in India.
That's incredible.
And more than any other country in the world. And so, it's a place where there's still a lot of progress yet to occur. There are still enormous numbers of children that don't ever go to school, right? And so there's still a big opportunity there. And I think one of the other things that's occurred, in addition to catalyzing government activity, is we've catalyzed some of the local entrepreneurs to now be philanthropic. And so it kind of creates it's momentum of its own, which is great to see.
I was reading the story about a man who was living in a slum, had gotten married, and was just desperate to get out of that slum because he wanted to provide a good life for his infant child.
Right.
And I was reading about the kind of life he wanted to provide. Again, he just wanted to have a place that was clean and sanitary and had electricity and running water. And I thought, my God, to give that, though, as the foundation from which he could launch, and the appreciation for just the simplest of things.
I mean, just think about clean water. I mean, how is a child going to be able to go into a classroom and learn if they don't even have clean water? I mean, so, taking care of family economic stability as one of our focuses is very, very important.
Yeah. A call to action for the DWEN audience here. We're going to use the phrase, stop talking and listen. So we've got a lot of great talkers here, I'm sure, because they run companies and they, put out the orders and they know what they want. They want to inspire their employees. But in this case, you're saying stop talking and listen. What do you mean by that? And what is it that we need to listen for?
I think we need to listen to the people that we're trying to help. And we also need to listen to the people in the communities who know what's going on. So we do a lot of talking. We talk with government officials, we talk with healthcare people in the community, we talk with school leaders, we talk with teachers, we talk with businesses, and then we get those insights and we let those help us formulate our path to move forward. It's very important to understand what's going on, because if you meet people where they are, then you can help them. And it's also important to listen, as we've said, to the problems. For instance, the students that Michael is referring to in South Africa, I mean, this one young man who wasn't showing up for class, on the surface, you might think he just wasn't studying or wasn't as motivated and driven as you had hoped. Turns out he couldn't buy soap, he couldn't wash his clothes, he was embarrassed to go to class. And so part of the wraparound services that we provide are, well, okay, we hear that, we now understand, because we got to the, really the root issue there. And we went and talked to the university, and we inserted a program which is a swipe card, and now there's an allowance that's appropriate for just the basics. But we wouldn't know that if we didn't ask why, and we ask it over and over again. So again, I think that listening is important. Ask why and then listen, and then get input from as many people as you can to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, we did a project, another project in India, and it was related to sanitation. And you kind of design this great solution. Okay, it's going to be cost effective. It's going to solve this problem, and then nothing happens, right? And what did we do wrong? Well, when you go and talk to the actual people that are going to be using this, it's a pretty big expense, even though it didn't seem like it was a big expense. So you apply some microfinance, you set up some effectively small businesses where they charge per use, and all of a sudden it catalyzes and you get 20 or 30,000 of these things deployed in a relatively short period of time. But if you'd kind of stopped that, well, it didn't work, then nothing would have happened. So you have to kind of keep going and look for the kind of look for the right answer.
Yeah. And understand it's a process, again, as Michael said. I mean, these things don't happen quickly.
Time.
Some things can take years before you see the real results of your efforts, but trying to get to the root cause, asking a lot of questions, involving people as much as possible, being patient, understanding it's a process, these things are all really important.
And interestingly, you guys always try to put together the data, right? You try,
Exactly.
You chronicle everything that you're doing, and helps to figure out the trajectory, the success, how you measure that. Talk about what you get from philanthropy versus business success. I mean, they've got to, I think, feed both parts of your soul, right? I mean, don't they?
Well, I mean, I think that from philanthropy, it's a very different thing. I mean, it's definitely an emotional thing, but I think I speak for both of us when I say that we hope that the greatest work that we do, the most important work that we do, will be through our philanthropy. And business is important and it's wonderful, but we're trying to really change lives here and make things better for people. So it's rewarding every time you feel like you're taking a step in that direction.
Yeah. Can you be emotional in business though? I mean, I'm thinking when you can't be emotional in business, right? I mean, Michael?
Sure you can, of course.
You can?
Yeah.
With success? Maybe so. If you were to speak to people individually here at DWEN, what is it you want them to take away from this conversation? What can they do? I mean, I know we can go to lessons earned, and that's a great thing to look at and help inspire them, but what is it that you want them to take away?
I think for me it would be try to figure out what are you most passionate about and stick with that. You really don't have to jump on board with your friend's idea or your company's idea. What do you want to do? And as long as you feel passionate about it and it's doing good, please do it. and I like to say this, it's a mantra I made up for myself a long time ago, but I like to always say, go forward, never give up, and absolutely never quit, because anything is possible. So it really doesn't matter what you're trying to do. Just keep doing it, going that way, and just keep trying at it and don't give up. I mean, that's what I would say.
It's hard though sometimes when you don't see, again, the enormity of the issues. I mean, how do you keep yourself motivated? I mean, Michael, when you see something, it's a huge problem and the results are coming in slow.
Well, I think perseverance and persistence and grit. I mean, you got to, this is not easy stuff. I think also for all of you, remember that the organizations that you're a part of, for-profit organizations can make an enormous difference in the world too.
And they are making.
Dell, we have our Legacy of Good program. We'll have had roughly 5 million volunteer hours by 2020, and wow. This is through actually paying and encouraging our people to volunteer all across the world. And there's 20 other parts of the Legacy of Good program that we have. And remember, while we're here talking about private foundations, certainly lots of good things going on there, companies themselves do an enormous good in the world, right? And if you step back and you say, okay, let's compare, just if you wanted to do that, right? Compare the Ford Foundation to the Ford Company, or compare the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for all the great work it's done to the Microsoft company, I think you'd find that those companies stand up actually quite well in terms of the good that they're doing in the world. And so the companies that you all are a part of can do an enormous amount of good in the world too. It's not just foundations or individuals, with their own time.
Yeah. Well, I personally am inspired by listening to these two, and I'm going to log on, I think at least weekly, to the new website and see what's going on and see about maybe bringing in my company, NBC and MSNBC, and seeing what we can do. But anyway, thank you both so much for inspiring us and for spending part of your afternoon with us. I think we're all very honored to have you here.
Oh,
so
thank you. Enjoyed
Michael
being here.
and Susan Dell.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's it. Off we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our session. Please join us next door for the reception at the W Hotel Terrace.